with, of course, it's going to go to the very end. Replay it, please.
So, it's 1947 and the war is cold, but the tea is hot. It's USA v USSR, Haley versus Selena, Warsaw versus NATO, pick a side. So, after World War II, Europe kind of falls off. So, the HBIC spot is open and USA and USSR both want it. And Joseph Stalin is trying to spread communism all around the world. So President Truman makes like containing and stopping it his whole personality. And Senator Joe McCarthy's like, I don't trust nobody trusts me. I'll be the Red Scare starring in your bad dreams. Meanwhile, China goes communist with Russia's help, and then Kim Jong-un's grandpa snatches up North Korea, and the war in Vietnam is low-key going really poorly, but the Govey's capping about it, and there's all these protests, and they're just like, that's unfortunate, son, so that's gonna drag on until Saigon in 1975. And the CIA is pulling all these shady ops in Latin America, and it gets to DEFCON 2 because Castro has missiles pointing at us, like rude, so JFK gets on the trap phone with Khrushchev, and they both agree to just like chill out. And Russia beats us to space, which was like embarrassing. So Neil and the boys had to pull out the lunar flex in 1969. But this is getting like hella expensive. Like it's the 80s now and it's giving detente. And Mikhail Gorbachev comes on the scene. He's like, I'm not like a regular president. I'm a perestroika president. And Reagan's like, all right, drop the wall. And Mikhail's like, okay, bet. So that comes down in 89 and the whole Soviet Union collapses in 91. Any questions?
All right. So World War II is over. Yesterday, we watched a video that showed what ended World War II. What was that big catastrophe that ended World War II? Hiroshima, us dropping the bomb on Hiroshima. We used this big atomic bomb, right? And we dropped it. Guess who we told? Nobody, not even our allies. Our allies didn't know we had this bomb. Russia was one of our allies. They were not happy with us. So us dropping that bomb and not telling Russia is actually going to be one of the things that is going to lead to the Cold War. What is the Cold War? What does that mean? Well, the Cold War is basically the United States and Russia, and we're in an arms race. Who can build up the biggest, most weapons all at once? So it's not a war where people are like pew-pewing at each other. It is a war where we are trying to build up our weaponry. So we drop an atom bomb. Well, I think one is fusion, one is fission, and then don't get the science in me because I'm out on that. But Russia is gonna drop the other bomb, the nuclear bomb. We've got the atom bomb. They're gonna drop a nuclear bomb. Again, one's fission, one's fusion. Don't remember which one is which. So we're all trying to make sure that the other people cannot destroy us, giving each other, I guess, the cold shoulder. So these notes are just for me. They're not really for you to write down. It's just for me to remember to tell you all of this. So after World War I, remember, everybody was trying to hopefully get to where they could rule themselves. Great Britain promised all of their colonized areas, yes, you can be free after World War I, just fight with us, and they lied. After World War II, they also lied. And so there was this big growing anti-imperial sentiment of, we don't want to be colonized anymore. We want to be a sovereign nation. Sovereign. They want to govern themselves. They don't want anything to do with anybody else colonizing them, which on your would you rather, a lot of you would rather be an imperializing nation and then one that is imperialized, which makes sense. You are going to start seeing the dissolution of empires, the restructuring of states, especially in Africa. Technological and economic gains are going to be experienced during World War II, both by the victorious nations. You're going to see a lot of shifting of power. Let's go back. Let's look at change of continuity over time. Who, if we look back in history, was the original powerhouse of the world? China, right? China was the OG. They were that powerhouse. All right. And then you've got the Industrial Revolution. And then who turns into the powerhouse? Europe, right? Great Britain. Europe, they really turn into the powerhouse. And then you've got world wars, right? Who comes out doing pretty good? The United States. We do. Absolutely. So we become a powerhouse. Not only are we a powerhouse economically, but guess what? We also are militarily, because we have got more advanced weapons than anybody else. So that makes us a powerhouse. All right. So this global shift, this power balance is going to change. Let's start here. All right. These would be two things to know. So if you're going to jot something down, I would say this would be kind of an important thing. So there are going to be, because of the Cold War, you're going to have new military alliances. Again, we don't want to say that word alliances because that's what brought us into World War I. But you're going to have two different alliances. You're going to have NATO. This is a great scholar bowler question here. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That is known as NATO. All right. And that is going to be everyone who's in the Atlantic Ocean. That's why it's called Atlantic. All right. So it's going to be like Canada, the United States, and Western Europe, all part of the Atlantic Ocean, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We have decided that we're going to work together to make sure nobody can take us down. We're actually going to work together militarily and economically. Well, Russia cannot have that. So Russia creates what is called the Warsaw Pact, which is the eastern side. So it's going to be Russia and Eastern European countries agreeing to work together. So you have these two groups, these two pacts that originate because of the Cold War. So a political effect of the Cold War would be the establishment of NATO and the Warsaw Pact. That would be a political effect of the Cold War. Okay? A political effect of the Cold War is the creation of NATO and the Warsaw Pact. So that's a big deal. And understanding some of these causes and effects, that's going to rule our whole test. Right? I mean, we know that they're always asking if one thing leads to another. If you understand the causes and effects, that really helps you a lot. And understanding change and continuity over time, how things change, how they stay the same. This is setting a precedent for us in the United States. All right. Now, these are not the only places on the globe, are they? It is not just America, Canada, and the Western European countries. And it's not just Russia and other European countries. We just talked about places that wanted to be independent, like Africa and even Southeast Asia, because remember, they were also heavily colonized. That's going to create the non-aligned movement. Now, you don't have to know this guy necessarily. It's just an interesting story. He was one of Time's Man of the Year, Kwame Nkrumah. I'm not going to say his name correctly. I'm very sorry. He's going to fight for Ghana's independence. He's going to be very ambitious. Like he wants to do all these things and really just build Ghana up, but he gets into debt very heavily with foreign countries to do this. And so he ends up like avoiding assassination attempts, goes into hiding. But one of the things he is known for is this. Let me see if I can zoom in for you. He is known for creating with Sukarno of Indonesia. They are going to create what is called the non-aligned movement. And really all you need to know about the non-aligned movement is that their whole goal was to promote peace and economic development. They wanted to promote peace and economic development. That was their big goal. If we can make sure that we don't have imperialized nations coming after us, we don't have any of that. We can build our economies up on our own. We're going to protect human rights. They really wanted international order and peace. So that was really their biggest thing. Maintain peace, grow the economy. That was their goal, free of imperial nations. So before World War II, it was great to say imperializing. That was a good term. After World War II, we see that term change into very negative connotation. Being an imperializing nation is no longer a good thing, right? We see that maybe it's not good to take over other people. A little rude. All right. Again, please don't try to write all that down because you don't need all that. You just need to know that their biggest goal was maintaining peace and creating economic growth, free of imperial rule. And now we have the spread of communism. We just talked about our allies here. So we've got the U.S. allies, which you can kind of see are spread all over Europe, some in Africa, a little in Latin America. And then you've got what is the Soviet bloc, is what it was called, BLOC. It's the Soviet bloc. And these are all the nations. You've got China, notice. You've got a lot of these areas. Notice after World War II, who is now our ally, Japan. But look at the non-aligned movement. All of these areas that were heavily colonized, are now part of this non-aligned movement. We just want peace. We just want economic prosperity. We don't want to have to deal with a bunch of junk. So there's going to be a lot of people. I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of these people and what they did, because their impact was felt for a very long time. This dude was a very evil man. Hold on. Sometimes my prezzies are super easy to click on. This guy is going to be he's going to actually be part of the Dirge. So in Ethiopia, there are 3 political parties. They're all vying for power. The Dirge, the EPRP, and then the rival All Ethiopian Socialist Movement. There are 3 political parties. They all want control. Mengistu, he is going to be the one who is going to end up taking control. He is going to rule viciously. He is going to rule and create what is called the Red Terror. As you can tell, with all of the skulls, lots of people are going to die. Remember, we were watching one of the videos and it's like trade, all these trade stuff, and then wars. And in 1900 forward, there is death everywhere. You've got the flu. You've got weapons of mass destruction. You've got leaders that are ruling in terrible ways. You've got economic development like the 5-year plan, the Great Leap Forward, these things that are mass murdering people, the Holocaust. So there's a lot of death 1900 forward. Genocides abound. So basically, if you were against him, you were murdered. You were slaughtered. He killed about 2 million people, and then even more through famine. But through murder, killed a bunch of people, ruled with an iron fist. Like, he was one that would parade people's skulls around on, like, spikes. Not the best dude on the planet.
How did he even manage to kill that many people?
Not very hard when people are afraid of you. If you've got to rule by murdering people and getting rid of your opponents, you're not a good leader. People should be able to follow you because you're a great leader and have good examples, and they believe in you, not be afraid. A good leader is not afraid of opposition. A good leader is willing to sit down and talk to somebody who doesn't agree with them and come up with some things that they can work together on. That's what good leaders do. And now we have Iran. So before the Iranian Revolution, you have got Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. He is going to be the first leader of Iran. Remember, Iran was part of the Ottoman Empire. And then after the mandate system, it was broken up. And now Pahlavi has taken over. He is a very harsh ruler, but he's going to force westernization like the Ottoman Empire tried. Did not work. He is going to accept a lot of U.S. aid for oil. So people are like, why do we care what goes on in the Middle East? Why does that affect us? Because we spent tons of money after World War II pouring money into this area to build up their oil fields. Those oil fields actually kind of belong to us because we're the ones who built them. So why do we care? Because it's ours. So why do they hate us? Because we built stuff there and it's ours. And so we're not going to do anything to create them burning these oil fields. What is going to occur is going to be called the White Revolution. It's a large-scale industrial development, literacy, education, land reform. Obviously, that all sounds beautiful. And done right could be wonderful. But it's called the White Revolution because there was no blood lost. Nobody actually fought. It's a revolution that was without fighting. All right, so Russia is going to assist Iran, helping them build infrastructure. Let's look at today. Let's see change and continuity over time in real time. Who is helping Russia now in the war with Ukraine? I'll give you a guess. It's Iran. It's Iran. Yeah. It's Iran. Yeah. So Russia assists Iran in building them up. And now Russia needs help. And remember, guys, this was not that long ago. When we look at the big picture of world history, that wasn't that long ago. That White Revolution, not that long ago. So Iran still owes Russia. So they're doing fine. So they're giving all the weapons. The weapons they're finding in Russia are from Iran. They're from China. They're actually also from India. The weapons they're finding and the things they're finding that are in Ukraine that Russia is using are not all from Russia. So there's a continuity over time. All right. Governments assisting one another, owing each other. All right. There's a lot on this one. So proxy wars are going to be the thing in the 1900s. Let me explain to you what a proxy war is, and you can write this down however you need to understand it. But I promise you the word proxy war will be somewhere on that test. A proxy war is a war where two countries are fighting, but they're not fighting each other. They're giving money to other countries and weapons to other countries who are fighting themselves. Let me give you a today example. We are in a proxy war, let's say, with Iran. We are giving money to Ukraine, who is fighting Russia. They are giving money and weapons to Russia, who is fighting Ukraine. So technically, our proxy war is with Iran because we're both funneling money to two people who are fighting, but we're not fighting each other. Does that make sense? So you're giving money and weapons to two countries that are fighting, and your proxy war is with the person who is also not fighting, but also giving money and weapons. So like we could say our proxy war is technically with Iran because they're giving money to Russia. We're giving money and weapons to Ukraine. It's like a mutual friend, and you're helping. Yeah. Proxy wars are good in the fact that you're not losing human collateral, but they generally end in human collateral. A lot of times, it's really hard to not eventually get invested in a war. Notice all of these wars. 1944 is our first proxy war that we see. And guys, we see proxy wars up until I think 1983. Not very long ago, really. So there's lots of proxy wars. We've been in several. So like all of these down here, that's pretty much it. Like the one in 62, that was with Russia. That one was directly with Russia because Cuba kind of got in the middle there. But we see a lot of those proxy wars. There's so many of them. I notice they're still going on. These are my pictures. So I went to Berlin. I learned more about the Cold War last summer than I could have ever imagined, and it was fascinating to me. So let me explain to you what happens. World War II ends. Germany gets divided. It gets divided into basically a free side and a communist side. In the middle of Germany is this city called Berlin. And the only way to be fair was to also take this city and divide it in a free side and a communist side. So you've got this city that's got free right in the middle of the communist. Well, as people are in this city, they are fleeing because they can literally walk across the street and get to the free side. And so they are in droves. The east side, which here's some propaganda. I took this off the bus window there. They were saying how everything was equal in East Germany. Communism was equal. Everybody was equal. Who got blamed for both world wars? Germany. Who had to pay a lot of money? Germany. Do you know they just paid those debts off 10 years ago? So they didn't even start rebuilding Germany until 10 years ago. So when you are in Berlin and you are looking at the sides of the streets, you can visibly see that is definitely West Berlin. That is definitely East Berlin, because East Berlin looks like a ghetto. It does. Like it is run down. It is rough. It is just rough. They're rebuilding it now, but like when you look at it, the west side is modern. It looks just like an everyday city. And like you've got these old buildings. This one is actually one that was kept up, but they had propaganda mosaics that they had on all these buildings. We're scientists. We do all this stuff. We give everyone a house. Does it have plumbing? Maybe. Everyone gets a home. Does it have running water? I don't know. All right. So people are seeing that, yeah, we've got money and a job, but we're not making enough to feed ourselves. We don't really have enough food. And so people are literally crossing the street and going into West Berlin so they can go and leave and go to the free side in droves. So obviously, East Berlin is not happy with this. They are losing a large portion of their population. So what do? Overnight, they build a wall right through the middle of Berlin. Now, one very cool thing, if you can see this picture here, anywhere they took the wall up, they put bricks to show where the wall once was so they would never forget where it was. And it's through the whole city like that. It's so neat to see. It really is cool. This is part of the wall that was untouched. They didn't fix it up. But they built this stuff overnight. It was wild. So like families are divided overnight. Like your grandma lives across town. No longer do you get to see her. Your parents live across town. You don't get to see them anymore. They're on the other side of Berlin. This is, there's the banners. This is the building with the banners where Hitler's got his big Nazi banners that hang. That's real famous. That was the place right there. And then this, I should have taken a picture without students, and I didn't. So this is actually a Holocaust memorial, and these represent bodies, caskets, really, of people that died during the Holocaust.
Are those people in this?
No, it's just a representation. But it goes on and on and on. And what you don't see is as you walk down, it gets deep. So like where it looks like they're just this tall, you're walking down into a ravine and the buildings are still really tall, but it's way down in the ground. It's pretty wild to see. And it's very creepy. I'm not going to lie. It is a very creepy place to be.
When was the Berlin Wall taken down?
Let us watch. This is actually really cool about the Berlin Wall.
You know one thing about the fall of the Berlin Wall, it might be this.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Or this. Or maybe...
I've been looking for freedom.
These moments were huge in unifying Berlin and undermining the physical symbol of a divided Europe during the Cold War. But they don't top this one. The last few minutes of an otherwise uneventful press conference on November 9th, 1989.
Also Privatreisen nach dem Ausland können ohne Vorliegen von Voraussetzungen, Reiseanlässe und Verwandtschaftsverhältnisse beantragt werden. Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis ist das sofort. Unverzüglich.
It might not look like it, but this is the moment the Berlin Wall became obsolete, completely by mistake. After
I was literally your age when this happened. When I was in high school, all of our maps had two Germanys, East Germany and West Germany. Like when this happened, I, as a high schooler, I had no idea the implications that was going to have. But like I lived this, like back then. They pulled TVs into the classrooms. Like we were watching this live. It was wild.
After the Allied powers defeated Nazi Germany in World War II, they divided the country into 4 parts, each controlled by a separate power. These formed into 2 new countries in 1949, Democratic West Germany and Soviet-controlled Communist East Germany, officially named the German Democratic Republic, or GDR. Through the 1950s, West Germany prospered as a free society and industrious member of Europe, and hundreds of thousands of East Germans began emigrating west in search of new opportunities. To stem the tide, the GDR erected a barrier along the inner German border, separating the 2 countries with barbed wire, guarded checkpoints, and, in many places, defensive measures like landmines. But there was a loophole in Berlin. And it goes back to when the 4 Allied powers controlled Germany. You see, even though the German capital was well inside the Soviet zone, the Allies divided control of it equally to match the rest of the country. And when East and West Germany formed, so did East and West Berlin. Even as the inner German border fortified, Berlin had no physical barrier dividing it. East Germans could simply walk or take public transportation to the western part of the city and travel freely from there.
The island of West Berlin had become the staging point for the free road to the west.
This brain drain took a huge toll on East Germany's labor force. By 1961, more than 3.5 million East Germans, about 20% of their population, had fled to the west. the majority of which were young and well-educated. But the Berlin loophole closed on August 13, 1961, when the city woke up to East German soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder along the invisible line dividing East and West Berlin.
Overnight.
Unannounced, they began unrolling kilometers of barbed wire through the middle of the city. They were building the Berlin Wall.
Brick by brick, until no contact but a friendly wave.
Travel out of East Berlin became strictly regulated. No one could leave unless they met strict requirements, and those who didn't faced a nearly impassable barrier, complete with floodlights and guard towers, where armed border guards patrolled day and night, with orders to shoot and kill anyone trying to cross illegally. And that's how it remained for 28 years. But change came in late 1989. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev had introduced social reforms meant to relax oppressive practices and open up discourse between people and government.
He is known for his political reform of glasnost and perestroika. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but those are two things he's known for.
These changes unintentionally sparked massive, peaceful uprisings throughout Eastern Bloc countries, including East Germany.
Things had kind of heated up all summer.
In 1989, Catherine Bambach was a young translator working for the East German news agency.
Then there were the famous Monday demonstrations in Leipzig, actually my college town. Initially thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands.
Freedom of expression and freedom to travel were key demands. And pressure on the GDR to loosen travel restrictions only grew as neighboring countries, particularly Hungary and Czechoslovakia, relaxed their border laws, prompting a mass southward exodus of East Germans. By early November 1989, more than 40,000 East German refugees had arrived at the West German embassy in Prague, hoping to travel to the West. The GDR was facing a crisis.
There were forces in the government that realized something had to be done. This was not sustainable. So lifting the travel ban was one way that they thought they could quell the protests and make people happy.
On November 8, 1989, GDR official Gerhard Lauter was tasked with drafting looser travel regulations, meant to be a temporary pressure release. The new rules were finalized less than a day later and read, "Private trips abroad can be applied for without conditions. Permits are issued on short notice." Without conditions, that's the key phrase here. This meant the strict application requirements were eliminated, and anyone who wanted could leave East Germany and come back. That afternoon, the updated regulations were handed to government spokesman Günter Schabowski, just as he was about to begin a routine press conference.
And as we all know, something kind of didn't go quite right there.
He didn't have time to review them before sitting in front of cameras, and as you can see from his handwritten roadmap of the press conference, he scribbled in a reminder to announce them at the very end. And on live TV at 6:53 p.m. on November 9th, he read the relaxed travel laws, for the first time, out loud.
Also Privatreisen nach dem Ausland können ohne Vorliegen von Voraussetzungen, Reiseanlässe und Verwandtschaftsverhältnisse.
It seemed totally unreal, but it was Schabowski saying it and was broadcast on official television, so it had to be true. There were people around me, older colleagues, who immediately said, this is the beginning of the end.
Watch a confused Schabowski shuffle his papers when a journalist asks a simple follow-up question.
Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis ist das sofort. Unverzüglich.
The thing is, if Schabowski had had time to read the new rules, he might have seen this on the final page. The new regulations were meant to go into effect the following day, in an orderly manner when the passport offices were open.
Kenntnis ist das sofort. Unverzüglich.
What happened next can only be described as a chain reaction. By 7:05 p.m., the AP wire had already gone out. GDR opens borders. And both East and West German nightly news reports announced the stunning policy reversal. East Berliners began gathering at the wall, and security officers tried to let them through slowly. But the final nail in the coffin came at 10:42 p.m., when this broadcast triggered a mass rush.
Dieser 9. November ist ein historischer Tag. Die DDR hat mitgeteilt, dass ihre Grenzen ab sofort für jedermann geöffnet sind. Die Tore in der Mauer stehen weit offen.
They actually weren't yet, but by this point, there was no going back. Tens of thousands of Berliners stormed the wall, saying they heard on the news that they could cross. The outnumbered East German border guards were completely overwhelmed.
Somehow they hadn't gotten the message, or they didn't know what to do, or they were afraid. Well, who knows? But they basically opened the border and thousands of people streamed into West Berlin.
Ich bin so happy war. Ich habe so viele Freunde drüben und ich freue mich so, weil ich schwör's euch. So toll.
Ist das ein schöner Tag? Ja. Ist das eine Nacht? Aber toll, da flippst du aus. Ich gehe West-Berlin!
Over its 28-year history, at least 140 people died trying to cross the Berlin Wall.
November 9th plus unification a year later was the most decisive event in my life. I basically went from one political system to another, and changes happened very quickly.
And it happened unintentionally, the result of a rushed plan and a botched announcement delivered in a small room at the end of a boring press conference.
Kenntnis ist das sofort. Unverzüglich.
So it kind of fell accidentally. You are going to see a lot of change because of the Cold War. When things change in Germany, it really starts the end of the Cold War. In case you don't know who this is President Reagan. He comes to the wall. He's trying to convince them to tear the wall down.
The Soviets themselves may, in
one of the most
way,
famous speeches in history,
be coming to understand the importance of freedom. We hear much from Moscow about a new policy of reform and openness. Some political prisoners have been released. Certain foreign news broadcasts are no longer being jammed. Some economic enterprises have been permitted to operate with greater freedom from state control. Are these the beginnings of profound changes in the Soviet state, or are they token gestures intended to raise false hopes in the West or to strengthen the Soviet system without changing it? We welcome change and openness, for we believe that freedom and security go together, that the advance of human liberty can only strengthen the cause of world peace. There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
He had an interesting sense of humor. You know, he had an assassination attempt. He was shot and survived. And then he was giving a speech at one point, and there was a loud bang in the background. And he said, "Miss me." Anyway, little humor, little presidential humor. All right.